Hello, dear authors and invited guests. Welcome to Technical Session 4A. Good morning to all. Good afternoon to all. Good evening, wherever you are. On behalf of Global Knowledge Research Foundation, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 6th International Conference on Information and Communication Technology for Competitive Strategies, in concurrent with 6th International Conference for, Smart Trends for Computing and Communications through Zoom. We appreciate all the participants on this platform to go along with us digitally in these unpredictable circumstances of COVID-19. We hope you will enjoy 2 days of the knowledgeable and interactive sessions. Just before we get started, I would like to introduce you all to the chair for this session, Professor Nilesh Sable. Professor Nilesh is an associate professor. Professor Nilesh Sable is an associate professor and working as a head of department in computer engineering and as a professor in JSPM's Imperial College of Engineering and Research, Bagoli, Pune. He has 13 plus years of academic experience in field of computer engineering. He has more than 40 research publications at national and international journals and conferences. Okay. Also, there is a special note for the participants that you will be given 8 minutes for the presentation and 2 minutes for the question and answers. On the 7 minutes, I will be raised a general reminder. And I request you all, while the presentation is going on, other participants kindly be muted. Okay, so let's start the session 4A. And our first presenter is Ajay Agrawal, and his paper title is Two Terminal Reliability Assessment of a Complex System. Dear participants, dear presenter, please, you may please start your presentation.
Yes. I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I have actually uploaded my PPT.
Okay.
So you will upload it or should I?
So you have to show the PPT.
Achha, I have to show.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Should I? Will it be okay or should I make it?
Sorry?
Means larger. Okay.
No, you have to just show the PPT and make it full screen also.
Full screen. Now, is it there? Full screen?
No. No, sir, it's the PPT is not showing here.
PPT is not showing. Okay. Now?
Yes, sir, it is, but make it full screen.
Whenever I am making it full screen from it, now?
Yeah, it is.
It is. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So, here I am myself, Dr. Ajay Agrawal. I am working in Kite Group of Institution as a professor in Department of Information Technology. My topic is assessment of reliability of a complex system. Means the complex system actually I mean is the system in which we cannot calculate reliability in a simple way. Let me say concept of fault tolerance, because reliability is concerned with all this. So hardware, software, and network cannot be totally free from failures, as we know. And fault tolerance requires a system to continue to operate even in the presence of faults. That is the meaning of fault tolerance. So fault tolerance should be achieved with minimum involvement of users or system administrators. So that system we want to build. Now, availability and reliability, I would like to differentiate it by giving the example also. A measurement of availability is a measurement of whether a system is ready to be used immediately. The system is up and running at any given moment. That is the meaning of availability. When we want, then it should be available. Reliability means a measurement of whether a system can run continuously without failure. System continues to function for a long period of time. So that is the reliability. So I am talking about this reliability and how to measure it. So the examples are for the availability. A system goes down 1 millisecond per hour as an availability of the more than 99.99%, but it is unreliable. Because whenever we want, it is not there. So a system that never crashes but is shut down for a week once every year is 100% reliable but only 98% available. So it means here we want that there is no problem if it is getting shut down for a week in a year. But the system must be 100% reliable, that we want. Maybe it is 98% available. So network reliability that we want to compute here. So the input problem is the probability that each component operates normally. Number one, this is the main thing, and output is network reliability. So here I am having this model undirected graph of vertices and edges. Age, we are in two modes only work, that is operational or field. Means it is 1 or 0, something like that. So age means operational hai or field. PE means probability of age is operational. So that is the meaning of reliability here of the age. It is the probability that the system, now we are talking about the network reliability. So it is the probability that the system operates successfully for a given period under given conditions. So maybe the parameter may be temperature, atmosphere, weather, system load, and traffic. So irrespective of all these parameters, it should operate successfully. So in other words, reliability of a network G is a probability that G supports a given operation. So reliability block diagram I am making can be used to determine if the system is operating or failed. Given the information whether each block is in operating or failed state, a block can be viewed as a switch that is closed when the block is operating and open when the block is failed. So it is like this, in a switch way we are going to view it. System is operational if a path of closed switches is found from the input to the output of the diagram. Then only we will say that the system is operational. Reliability of the block diagram. Each component of the system is represented as a block. System behavior is represented by connecting the blocks. Blocks that are all required are connected in series, and blocks among which only one is required are connected in parallel. As usual, failures of individual components are assumed to be independent for easy solution. So here, each and every component, I am considering that it is independently working. For series parallel RBD components, use series parallel reduction to obtain the final answer. So series parallel reliability that we have seen, that the components in a set are said to be in series if they must all work for the system success. All, this is important. Or only one need to fail for system failure, in other way. So every component must work here. So let RA and RB with the probability of a successful operation of components A and B respectively. So A and B are the components and these are the probability of successful operation, RA and RB. And QA and QB respectively the probability of failure of these components. Since success and failure are mutually exclusive events, so RA plus QA will be one and B must be working. It means the system probability will be that it should be multiplied by RA and RB. So if in series system, if there are n components, so using the product law of reliability, we can say we can achieve the reliability of the system. And in failure case, we will say system is failed or unreliable if we are going to negate it with the 1. So this is ultimately we will achieve here as a QS will be QA plus QB minus QA QB. For the system reliability decreases very rapidly. This is important as the number of series components increases. So system consisting of n independent parallel components, system fails to function if and only if all n components fail, means because they are in series. So component I is functioning properly and EP means parallel system of n components is functioning properly. So this is one component, this is parallel system of n components. So RP is equal to probability of EP. So if we are going to see the parallel system, the parallel system has failed, all n components have failed. It means naturally, because if it is a set, we will take the intersection here. So in terms of intersection will be replaced by the probability, that it means then it will get multiplied.
I think he just lost the connection.
Yeah, Harish sir, we are not. Yes, he has lost the connection. We'll just want to wait for 1 minute, or we'll start with another candidate.
Okay, sir.
The rest of the candidate, make sure that your connection is clear now. Okay. Till a time being, make sure that your connection is stable so that we will not have any sort of disturbance in the while presentation. Harish sir, we can start with the another candidate.
Okay, sir. Okay. Our next presenter is Jenny Kasuria, and her paper title is Simulation of WSN-based crowd monitoring and alert generation architecture.
Very good morning, everyone. Yeah, can I start with the screen sharing?
Yes, we are.
I hope the screen sharing is visible to you, sir.
Yes, it is, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the entire team of ICTCS for giving me an opportunity to present my research paper entitled Simulation of WSN-based Crowd Monitoring and Alert Generation Architecture. Myself, Ms. Jenny Kasuria. I am an assistant professor working at GLS University, Gujarat, Ahmedabad. These are the points which I would be covering throughout my presentation. I have done the simulation of an architecture. The architecture is based on wireless sensor network for monitoring the crowd gathering. This architecture is not only monitors the crowd gathering, but also makes sure that the number of incidents, casualties, the number of deaths occurring, right? That focuses on reducing the number of deaths occurring at crowd gatherings. Now, crowd gatherings over here, which I'm talking, can be of any type. It can be a religious gathering. It can be a say for example a sports event, a political rally, right? Any kind of crowd gathering event, right? In that we have proposed a sensor network based architecture. Now this sensor network based architecture, here the entire area is divided into sectors. The region of the crowd gathering, the venue is divided into sectors which consist of CSMU, security guards, paramedics, smart navigation screens, pilgrim wristbands, and emergency exit pathways, which contains the barricades. Now the CSMU, that is centralized sensing and monitoring unit, which I'm talking about, basically it monitors the entire sector, the number of people accumulating at the sector. If the number of people accumulating at a sector crosses the threshold limit, then it will generate an alert and try to disperse the crowd to the nearby sectors. If any person, right, is not feeling well, if he's having a lack of oxygen or something like that, any other health related issues, right, then we have pilgrim wristbands, which each and every pilgrim or the person entering the venue has to compulsorily wear, and which contains sensors that will monitor the health. If the health degrades, then an alert is sent to the nearby paramedic and the sensing CSMU unit, and he will get a first aid medical treatment. So this is an entire architecture which we have proposed. It is purely based on wireless sensor network. And the objective of this architecture was to reduce the number of casualties occurring at mass gatherings. Now, we thought of implementing this entire architecture, but before implementation, we tested the entire architecture through simulation. Simulation is done basically using network simulator, that is NS2. NS2 is basically an object-oriented event simulator, which is based on programming languages like C, C++, and OTCL. OTCL is the object-oriented tool command language. Network simulator is can implement various routing protocols, can simulate various topologies very efficiently. It also provides NAM animator, which can capture the packet traces. The packet sent and received from one node to another can also be captured, right? Apart from that, network simulator also allows us to measure the performance of the network through various parameters. So that's why we have gone through use network simulator for the simulation. Now the simulation, initial simulation parameters which we have set up. This is a list of simulation parameters which we have set up. We are using a wireless channel. Initially, we have done a simulation of only 22 nodes with 802.11 MAC protocol and omnidirectional. We have used AODV routing protocol, and the maximum packet size, that is the maximum size of a packet which is sent, is 1000, and 25 seconds is the simulation time. Now I have the slide shows the entire simulation process through which I have done the simulation. I have created 2 sectors. Now these are the screenshots of my simulation. You can see on the left hand side in figure 1, the CSMU has been represented by the red color and the sensor nodes are represented by green color. Now if the number of nodes in a sector, right, is increasing, crosses threshold, right, so it will generate an alert that sector 1 is overcrowded. Now this notification will be sent to the control room. Now, if it receives an acknowledgement from the control room, right, it receives an acknowledgement from the control room, then what we do is we disperse the crowd to the nearby sector. Over here, you can see the nodes moving toward the next sector, nearby sector, where the crowd count is low, and so that we can disperse the crowd to such a sector so that they are safe, right? So this is how the entire simulation is done. Now, based on this simulation of 22 nodes, we have also measured the performance of the network. These are the criteria on which performance has been measured. Let us see how these are the output of the 22 node simulation performance, right? Probability density function, energy consumption, overhead throughput, and end-to-end delay. These are the 5 parameters which I have measured and tested how the network performs. As you can see, the PDF, that is probability density function, has been measured in the screenshot. In the next, overhead has been measured, right? And the throughput as well has been measured along with energy consumption. So this is the 22 node output of my simulated network. Now what I did is I tried to test the network by increasing the number of nodes to 500 and 1000, and then after I tried measuring the performance of the network. When I have the performance of the network, when the number of nodes is 500 and probability density function is say 0.2547, the value is 0.2547 bits per second, and when the number of nodes increase to 1000, it is 0.4796 bits per second, right? So probability density function is giving good results. The amount of energy consumed is very low when I increase the number of nodes, that is when the number of nodes are 500, the energy consumption is 1.141. But if I increase, the energy consumption goes down, which is required. Then the throughput is increasing very nicely. Now if the number of nodes is 500, the throughput is 129.89 bps. When it is 1000, it is, I think, more than double, that is 220.61. The overhead, yes, definitely overhead is decreasing when I increase the number of nodes. Overhead, it is 116.766 bps, whereas if I increase the number of nodes to 1000, it is 80.536. And lastly, I have measured the delay in milliseconds. Now number of nodes is 500, the delay is 194.02, but I increase it to 1000, it is 82.88. So the delay is getting decreased and the throughput is increasing, energy consumption is decreasing, which shows that the simulated network is good enough and it can be implemented in real time. By increasing the number of nodes, it is going to give a better performance. The same has been represented through a graph, right? This graph shows the same performance comparison. So based on the entire simulation process, I can conclude that the architecture proposed gives encouraging results by increasing the number of nodes, which means that the real-time implementation of that is definitely feasible. So that's all from my side. These are the references. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to present on this. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please start.
Hello.
Can you tell me, have you used some sort of devices like mobiles for this?
Sorry, mobile
Sensor network system, which was integrated with your wireless, what we can say, multimedia sensor network. It was the system which was previously implemented, okay, for this crowd detection and alert system. What new you have taken in your system?
Sir, this entire architecture is purely wireless sensor network based. There are no other, we are not using any kind of RFID over here. There are research reports are that they have used everywhere, they are using RFID tags for keeping a track on the crowd count. So I have proposed an architecture which is sensor network based, and for which part of which I have simulated and part of the implementation I have done through prototype development. The Pilgrim wristband. Sorry?
Which simulator you have used?
I have used NS2, sir.
Yes, carry on. What you were saying?
Hello,
Okay,
sir.
Ajay sir, you can continue.
Okay, thank you.
Sir,
Thanks a lot, sir.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Can I leave?
Yes, Jenny ma'am, you are done.
Thank you.
Rajesh sir, you just continue from the same slide.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Is
Be
it
faster.
shared?
Yes, it is shared. You just be fast because
Okay,
candidates are
okay.
waiting.
Thanks a lot. Now, I will be coming to main complex system, non-series parallel systems. A complex system is one that cannot be broken down to groups of series and parallel components. That I mean, actually. So there are two ways for computing network reliability, exact and approximate. So here I am actually focusing on exact network reliability. So let us suppose this system is there. This is this system which is having only 5 components. I am calling it as that complex system. Why? Because from source S to terminal T, there is no parallelism or no series connections of any components. So that's why it is a complex system I am calling it. So there are 4 approaches. First is state event is space inauguration method, second cut set, third pass tie set, and decomposition method fourth. So in state event space method, what I am doing actually is, because there are 5 components. So if there are 5 components, naturally total 2 to the power 5. That means 32 states, system states I will be having, right? So the reliability of the system will be probability of the union of all mutually exclusive events that yield a system success. So because there are 5 components, component name is A, B, C, D, E. So if I am taking the component 1 is A is working, then I am taking it 1. If it is not working, then I am taking, let us suppose, 0. In the case of D, here. So I will be having 2 to the power 5. That is 32 these combinations, right? So here what I am doing is that if I want to make communication between S to T, then naturally I will be seeing which all series components or give me the path actually. So A and B can give me the path, then C and D also. So all that I am actually having union of all those paths which will be giving me what successness in this system. So RA, RB like this. RA and RB is not there. RE, RCB, all these. If RA, E, C, D will be there, then also I will be having a path from source S to T. So because there are 32 events, so only 16 events will provide me connection from S to T. So if I am taking reliability of each component, that is 0.9, then naturally I will be having this equation, and it will be giving me overall reliability between S and T 0.97848. So this is about the state space method. Second is cut set method. In the cut set method, what I am saying is,
Ajay sir, be fast, be fast. Your time
set is a set of system component which when failed causes failure of the system. So set is actually union of those links which, if I am going to remove any link from that cut set, naturally it will causes the failure system. So a minimal cut set means it will be should have a minimum number of edges or components. So cut set here, a minimal cut set, if I am talking about of this system, so from V1 to V4, if the message should go from V1 to V4, so all these are the cut set. It means if I am going to break V1 to this here I am taking 2 edges, and if I am going to break this, naturally the communication between V1 and V4 will be hampered. So it is like that. Now, in the case of the bridge network, so cut set method, if I am going to see that there is one cut that is A and B, if A and B, this is one cut. This C and D will be the another cut. Then AED will be the another. EB will be the another cut. So I have taken all that here, and they are in series. C1, C2, C3, C4. There are 4 cut I have taken, and they are in series. So difference from the real series parallel structure is converted into cut set. So if I am going to compute the failure of the whole system, naturally failure probability of all units in bridge network, if I am taking here each component's failure probability is 0.1, then it will be coming around 0.02152 overall. So ultimately, the reliability of the whole system will again be coming the same, that is 0.97848. So this is the cut set method. Now path tie set method. In this, what we are doing actually is, in tie set method, instead of cut, actually working on failure, but here we are working on success. So say for example, a set of component AG whose operation implies guarantee system.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but we have running out of time. So please conclude your presentation.
जस्ट अ मिनट, एक थोड़ा सा मैं काम कर रहा हूँ, 1 मिनट, 10-15 मिनट बाद मैं कर लूँगा, ठीक है. So sorry. So path set will be that V1 to V4 we want to send the message. So this is the one way, this is the another way, this is the another way, this is the another way. If we will be having these path sets, so we can send the message from S to T. So means I can send the message from this AB, from CD, AED, and AB, sorry, CEB, all that way I can use. So this, all these path sets, in path sets we are taking all these tie sets in parallel. While there in cut set we were taking all cut sets in series. That is the difference. So there are 4 paths.
Ajay sir, you are out of time. Kindly wind up early.
Hello?
You are out of time, sir. Your time is getting over. Kindly wind up.
Okay. So ultimately there is another decomposition method because time is short. So I will say the state space method is an approach where full state space is analyzed in order to provide an accurate assessment of the reliability. So it will be useful for warranty period calculation, system failure rate, system MTTP. So all these are the things. So these are the analytical techniques, and if the system is becoming more larger, then naturally we will be going towards simulation methods. That's all. Thank you.
Now, sir, just one question. Whenever just one question to you, sir. Whenever we are computing network reliability, it is an NP hard problem, right?
NP hard problem.
Yes.
Sir, actually, what I am here saying is that if I am having a network where the components are there, right?
Okay.
So if I am actually particularly doing between S and T, that is source and destination. I want to find out the path is there or not between S and T. Successful is there or successfulness is there or not. That's the thing. I am not actually calculating the whole reliability. I am just finding out whether there is a way to get the message through from S to T.
Okay, fine. Harish sir, we can go for next.
Yes, okay, sir. Thank you. Should I leave, sir?
Yes, sir.
Can I share my screen, sir?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so our next presenter is Swati, and her paper title is Data Science and Blockchain a Perfect Match? Swati, you may please start your presentation. Hello.
Your voice is too low, Swati. You make an arrangement for the voice.
Hello. Hello. Now am I audible?
It's not clearly void. You are audible. It's not clear. No, not clearly.
You just make an arrangement so that till the time being, take another candidate, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay, so our next presenter is Devesh Kumar Srivastav, and his paper title is Review of Road Pathol Detection using Machine Learning Techniques. So Devesh is not here. And so moving forward for our next presenter is Khyati Chawda, and her paper title is Design and Analysis of Band Stop Filter using Hexagonal Split Ring Center for Wireless Application.
Yes, sir. Can I share my screen, sir?
Yes, you can, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Screen is visible, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, sir. Myself, Khyati Chawda. I'm working as assistant professor in electronics and communication branch from Shantila Shah Engineering College, Gujarat Technology University, Bhavnagar, Gujarat. And my co-author is Dr. A.K. Sarvaiya. He is also assistant professor in Government Engineering College, Bhavnagar. Today, my research topic is for the paper is design and analysis of the band stop filter using a hexagonal split ring resonator for the wireless applications. So the abstract for this paperwork is in this wireless application, the microwave filter is the most considerable component to pass the required band and remove the unwanted frequency band. The metamaterial have the artificial characteristics that have to minimize the size of the unit cell, which we have to use for the active and the passive design in the field of microwave. In this proposed design or the work of the design, try to simulate and fabricate the band stop filter using a microstrip feed lines loaded with the pair of the hexagonal unit cell of the shape of the hexagonal ring resonator for the single and the dual frequency, the simulated and the fabricated result for the S band, and the two frequency is for the wireless local area network applications, and the two frequencies desired is a 2.4 gigahertz and 3.6 gigahertz. The proposed band stop filter design provides a good isolation for the MIMO applications, isolation applications in antenna and the Wi-Fi applications that will give the accurate rejections with the good selectivity in the RF transmitter receiver design for the WLAN applications. So in this my paper, I will try to design for the single band stop filter using a metamaterial property and dual frequency for using a metamaterials property, that both will be providing the isolations which will be mostly required in the MIMO applications. Why we have to use a metamaterials unit cells? It will be tried to reduce the size of the antenna or the filters or the any RF design. So that first I will show that is a hexagonal split ring resonator using for the band stop filter for the single frequency in the S band. According to the IEEE X0 2.11 standards, the 2.45 and the 3.65 is mostly used for the wireless and the Wi-Fi applications. So in figure 1, that is the simulated results for the single hexagonal split ring resonators loaded with the microstrip line. The material used is a Roser RD Duroid 5880 with the height is 1.57 mm and the permittivity for that material is 2.2. In the second figure, that is that will be show the simulated result, that particularly 2.4 gigahertz with the good result of the insertion loss and the return loss. In the third figure, I have to fabricate this design with the prototype and I have to measure using a VNF. Now, that I have to same implement for the dual frequency. That dual frequency is 2.45 and the 3.6 gigahertz. That will be covered the single band S. So first figure, that is a load simulation using the CST software, that is the CST microwave. Mostly we have to use for the antenna and the filter design applications. That is a 2 hexagonal split ring resonators will be loaded into microstrip lines with the proper gap. Now in the second figure, I have to use a Roser RT Duroid 5880 material. I have to fabricate it and then simulate using the CST software. I have to get the good result of the return loss and the insertion loss. The main is insertion loss is a very less compared to the previous work of the parameters, that is a minus less than minus 2 dB. And the third one is using a VNA, that is a vector network analyzer, which is the vector network key field Fox RF network analyzer N99138 for the 4 gigahertz at the measured 4th August 2020 at the GEC Bhavnagar for the dual band frequency. For the dual band frequency band stop filter using a dual ring pair of the hexagonal that will be loaded with the microstrip line. So that is a total comparative tables which will be the measured and the simulated for the single and the dual frequency for the band stop filters. For the single frequency, the hexagonal split ring resonator at 2.4 gigahertz, it's S21 parameter. That S21 parameter, it's this return loss, that is a cutoff or that is a notch of that band stop filter, which will be the minus 70.85 dB, and the insertion loss will be indicated the S11 parameter in the dB is a minus 1.28 dB. The desired bandwidth, that is a 52 megahertz, and the total dimension is a 30 cross 35 cross 1.57 mm3. For the same design for the dual frequency, that is a hexagonal split ring resonator band stop filter for the 2.45 gigahertz with the return loss S21 is a minus 70.85. The insertion loss is a minus 1.28 and the desired bandwidth is a 52 megahertz. Total dimension for the dual frequency for the SAM band is 40 cross 1.57 mm3. Similarly, for the 3.6 gigahertz, the return loss is minus 18.40. The insertion loss is a minus 1.1309. The bandwidth is a 17 megahertz. The dimension will be given. So that is a total cumulative summary for the single and the dual band frequency. Here I have to only show the simple single band with the dual frequency. But in future also we have to use a dual band or the multi-band. With the multi-frequency, as per our requirement, we have to create a band pass and the band stop filter. So according to our requirement, we have to minimize the interference of the different frequency to each other's. That is mostly the MIMO antenna that have to array of the antenna that will be reduce the interference of that factor. So the conclusion in this chapter, in this paper, that is a hexagonal split ring resonator loaded with the MS microstrip line, micro band stop filter designed for the wireless applications, and the using a band stop filter to develop for the isolation in MIMO and the select and the reject the desired frequency for the multi-service radio application, wireless applications, the 2 frequency 2.45, the 3.6 gigahertz according to IEEE 802.11 standards. Increase the number of HSRR in the future works. We have to get the better rejection and the selectivity, but the insertion loss will also rise if you have to increase the ring of the metamaterial unit cell or the resonator. The filter dimension is as per the description 30 cross 35 1.57, and the second for the 40 cross 40 1.57 mm3 for the desired 2.4 and the 3.6, and that is a good agreement between the simulated and the fabricated results. Here that is my references, and thank you.
Can you go to your conclusion slide?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now just tell me, hexagonal split ring, and
Yes.
we were having previously a square split ring. What exactly improvement is there in this hexagonal split ring?
Okay, actually, sir, that is a split ring resonator is nothing but one concept of the metamaterial unit cells. If you have to change the dimension or the shape, that according to that shape, we have to give that name. Here, that is a split ring resonator in the circular shape, otherwise in square shape. I have to change it.
Right. But you have chosen this hexagonal split ring.
Yes.
There may be some additional advantages of it. No,
Yes.
that is what I am asking.
Yes, the first one is I have to increase the length of the inductance. If I have to in the square, what happens? That is the radius is of 4, length and width. But in the hexagonal, that hexagonal shape will be increase the length of the radius and that is increase the inductance, nothing but the inductive value, and that inductive value direct performance of that unit resonator. So that will be give the proper accurate result at desired frequency.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing else.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can I stop my sharing?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, I think so. Kathy has fixed that problem.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Swati.
Hello.
Swati, have you
Yeah.
fixed your problem?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I left now my meeting, sir? Khyati?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Shall I share my screen?
Yes, Swati, please.
Is it visible, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Swati. I'm the research scholar in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering in NIT Karnataka. And my research paper is Data Science and Blockchain a Perfect Match? So here, first of all, before going to the main thing, I'll first explain what is blockchain. And blockchain technology is mainly the decentralized and distributed ledger technology, which has introduced with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is, as we know, it is a cryptocurrency. And the real idea of Bitcoin is introduced in 2008 by a pseudonym like Satoshi Nakamoto. From 2008, Bitcoin and as well as blockchain was developing yearly. So now the blockchain technology is most emerging technology in the world. So in 2009, Bitcoin network has started, and the first cryptocurrency stock exchange was launched in 2010. And later on, now in 2021, one Bitcoin rate, today's Bitcoin rate, actually it is 47,005 something USD. So as we know, it is like, it is a boom. And the development is in this stage, like first generation, it was initially only the cryptocurrencies, that is blockchain, Ripple and Dash. It mainly used as store and transfer of value. And the second generation was actually the programmable via smart contracts. So the Bitcoin, or we can say the blockchain itself has developed from cryptocurrency to the programmable things, example, Ethereum. So Ether is the coin for Ethereum. And now the third generation is enterprise blockchains, which is mainly used by the industries. So Hyperledger, R3 Corda, Corda, and Ethereum Quorum, etc. are the third generation. So mainly now the blockchain has used in the industries also. So the next generation will be highly scalable with high concurrence. So we'll see what exactly is blockchain. The blocks in the blockchain consist of the hash with some information of its previous block. So initially, when we are thinking about some transactions, these transactions will be hashed, and this hash will be hashed together to form another hash. So mainly this whole hash will be generated as a tree called Merkle tree. And this Merkle tree's Merkle root will be stored in the block. So the entire block, one block may consist of several number of transactions. So each block can hold any number of transactions. It will be dependent on the chain, blockchain capacity. So the hash is a unique mathematical code. As we know, it is a once we are changing a bit in this, it will be changing the entire hash. That is the main advantage of blockchain also. So that's why blockchain has used the hashing technique. So blockchain uses Merkle tree functions and Merkle root field that presents the hash value of the current block. And when transactions are taking place in the network, their respective nodes will validate these transactions. So we'll see how this blockchain will work. So initially we are explaining here in terms of Bitcoin. As I said earlier, blockchain is not only Bitcoin, so many applications are there, but for the understanding purpose, I am explaining in terms of Bitcoin. So initially, if a person want to send something to B, and what will happen, the transaction is represented as a block. As I said earlier, it will be in terms of Merkle root and Merkle tree. the block is broadcasted to every node in the network. So that is why I said it is a distributed ledger technology. And also it is a decentralized technology. There is no centralized authority to handle this. So everyone in the network or every node in the network has equal power. So sufficient miners will approve the transaction. They will check and they will verify and validate the transaction, whether it comes to the correct hash or not. Then if the sufficient miners, maybe like above 51% of the miners are agreeing with this, the transaction will be added to the blockchain. So finally, the B receives the money. So blockchain uses public and private keys in order to form the digital signature for ensuring security. So authentication is achieved using these keys and authorization arises. So once this information is broadcasted, the validation of the process starts. So the nodes that are present in the network try to solve the puzzle related to the transaction in order to process it. And the nodes spend computational power in order to solve the puzzles. That is a disadvantage which is coming in the blockchain, because computational power will be very high. So in Bitcoin, it is very high, and now the researchers are working on it to reduce the computational power. So once the puzzle is solved, the node will receive the Bitcoin in the form of the reward. And this kind of work is called as the proof of work problem. That is the consensus mechanism which used in the Bitcoin. So there are several consensus mechanisms based on the application. The application will select which consensus mechanism it has to use. And there are several consensus mechanisms, as I said earlier. It is one is proof of work, which is used by the Bitcoin. Another is proof of capacity, proof of stake is there. And practical Byzantine fault tolerance algorithm is there, which is mainly used in the enterprise blockchain, especially Hyperledger Fabric. And if a new block is added to the chain, the existing nodes are updated in the network, and the new data will be broadcasted in the network, and all the nodes are updated. So that's why we can say it is very secure and tamper-proof, because all the ledger is visible to all the nodes in the network, and once anybody is trying to tamper this data, that will be visible to everyone, since it is used hash technology. So once any single bit is changed, also the entire network will be noticed the same. So as we discussed earlier, some essential features of blockchain is decentralized. It is decentralized, and peer-to-peer network is immutable, tamper-proof, authentication and integrity is there, and it is has secure communication. And some important blockchain platforms are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Hyperledger Fabric, Litecoin, Quorum, etc. And mainly there are so many or several applications for blockchain. So one is digital currency, that is Bitcoin. Mainly the people are aware of cryptocurrency only in terms of blockchain, but there are several other applications also in terms of smart contracts, Ethereum, and Internet of Healthcare, smart city energy consumption, government election, then identity management, then the land registry, then Internet of Things, the access of management in IoT, cloud storage, and for computing, distributed peer-to-peer applications, crowd sensing applications, like in the previous presentation, one of the author was discussing about this. There also we can use the blockchain technology, and government services, waste management, etc. So blockchain is recognized as a solution of addressing these issues. Then, although blockchain was originally designed for the digital currency, but these features of it encourages to opt the various applications. So how we are thinking of integrating data science and blockchain? So mainly data science, as we know, it is the science to extract valuable insights and information from both structured and unstructured data, so to solve the real world problems. So with a lot of advantage and challenges, blockchain and data science can end up being an amazing blend to oversee information amount in the quality productivity. So in this paper, we are investigating the new aspect of mixing data science and the blockchain. So data science empowers the information to forecast, while blockchain guarantees information trustworthiness. And some factors that will empower the combination of blockchain and data science are data integrity, data security, prediction, data sharing, data analysis. So when we are using data science in blockchain, for example, if we use prediction, we can use prediction in the calculation of like price in the Bitcoin. As we said earlier, Bitcoin's price is increasing day by day. So it is like a boom. And if we are using prediction technique here, mainly if someone is investing in Bitcoin, they can mainly make use of this technology. And the data science ability can be used to dissect blockchain information to infer scientific information, experience, and hidden patterns. And by utilizing a blockchain organization to store data from studies, researchers can foster using previously utilized information to try not to rehash information examination that is now led before. And these two technologies can be joined to convey continuous data analysis, and that can alter numerous ventures and smooth out business measures. So some use cases are like banking, healthcare, agriculture, supply chain management, etc. So some of the examples let's discuss here, like healthcare. We know this patient data is very it should be very much secure, and privacy should be maintained in this kind of data. But as we know, these data are the main thing which is shared by this hospital or data companies. So this data should be secure, and it can be used, make use of blockchain and data science. So how we can do that? Identity management of individuals, that is doctor, patient, members, and suppliers, and unique IDs for restorative gadgets in the medical production network, or authoritative members or validators in the system. This is essential to aspect of blockchain use cases in medicinal devices. So what will happen if we are using blockchain in this? So the data of a patient, if once we are storing in the blockchain, only the authorized people or the nodes in the network could see this data. So actually, I didn't mention the types of blockchain here. Actually, there are private, public, and consortium blockchains. So once it is like it is a private blockchain, the cryptocurrencies are actually public blockchain. So anybody can join in the network and do the trading and all. But some private blockchains are there. We can say it is permissioned blockchain. That is, some permission should be there to participate in those networks. So such blockchains we can make use of in such cases like healthcare systems, and only the authorized person like doctor, patient, or some lab people could make use of this data. And what happens if some patient is prescribed some medicine, and this patient only can see what kind of disease he is having, and only the particular doctor can see what kind of disease he is having and all. And his history is also be stored in such ledgers. And in terms of agriculture, when we see, farmers may suffer significant agriculture losses as a result of natural disasters like flood.
Sorry to interrupt
rain.
you, but you have last 1 minute. Please conclude your presentation.
Okay. So in agriculture also we can make use of blockchain and data science. Like in agriculture, we know if some losses is coming to the farmers, he has to apply in the government like this much loss I got, and government officials will come and check, and it will be a long procedure, and later on the farmer will get a minimum amount of money as a compensation. But if we are using blockchain here, the disaster will be recorded whenever the disaster happens, and the farmer can easily be benefited from this. And in supply chain management also, when we see when a fish is captured, the sensors are attached to this and record the information such as the location from where it is caught, and its temperature, its moisture, etc. And till it reaches to our plate. So we can track the entire journey using blockchain, journey of the fish from the sea to our plate through the blockchain technology. So as a conclusion, we can say blockchain it's in early stages, may not show up so because of the promotion of the innovative has gotten in the brief period. And once one would expect that as innovation develops and there are more advantages around it, more solid use cases will be distinguished and investigated, as data science is one area that will profit from this. And I concluded the paper. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Swati, your topic is quite good. Huh? Because
Thank you,
if you'll go through the current recent trends, it is the need to integrate data science or data with the blockchain. Now, the need is to work on this only, that the data what you have presented, two things, that healthcare is the major one,
Yes.
where you should keep your data secure, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So very good. You can go ahead with your research. All the
Thank
best
you
for
so
you.
much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So shall I leave?
Yes,
Yes,
Shiva, please.
Yeah, thank you.
So start with our next presenter is Padma Priya MK, and her paper title is Effect of Data Compression on Ciphertext, Aiming Secure and Improved Data Storage.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Padma Priya from New Horizon College of Engineering, Bengaluru. I'm here to present the result of an experimental study conducted on the topic effect of data compression on a ciphertext, aiming secure and improved data storage. And the co-author of this paper is Dr. Pamela Vinita Eric, Professor, New Horizon College of Engineering, Bengaluru. In today's digital world, around 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is getting generated every day and is going to increase further due to the encroachment of technology. In addition to storing as well as processing such a huge amount of data, it is also important to protect the business data. It can be done using strong cryptography techniques, enhanced key management and authentication policies. But the problem with the cryptography technique is it increases the size of the ciphertext. So as a result, most of the companies either go for partial encryption or keep the data open, which provides a room for cyber criminals. On the surface, the data compression and the data encryption are conflicting for the reason that encrypted data cannot be compressed by any known compression algorithm. The motivation behind this work is to determine the effect of data compression on ciphertext, aiming towards storage optimization. This work focuses on conducting an experimental study to determine the effect of compression on the ciphertext, which is in the form of an amino acid codes. So the objective of this work is to identify the compression ratio obtained using Huffman coding as well as LZMA compression method. So for our study, we have taken a ciphertext, which is a result of a DNA-based encryption. So in case of this DNA-based encryption, XOR operation is performed between the plain text and a DNA string, which is obtained from the public database. And the resulting string undergoes certain steganographic operation where random sequences of ATGC, which are DNA nucleotide codes, are inserted into the intermediate ciphertext. And further, the sequence is converted into an amino acid code by replacing DNA codons with their corresponding amino acid code. So for our study, we have taken this ciphertext as an input, and we have used two compression algorithms, that is Huffman coding algorithm, which is an entropy-based compression algorithm, and LZMA compression, which is a dictionary-based compression method. Both are lossless compression algorithms. We have used these two algorithms to determine the effect of data compression on the above ciphertext of different sizes. And the test computer used was an Intel Core i3 2 GHz machine with 4 GB RAM. So first, let us look into the Huffman coding method, which is an entropy coding method. It assigns flexible length code to the characters based on their number of occurrences in the input file. The most frequent character is assigned with smallest length code, and Huffman coding prevents ambiguity by means of prefix coding. That is, no two characters will, a character will not be having a code which is a prefix of another character. For a given set of alphabet X with the frequency distribution f of xi, the number of bits needed to encode a message of n characters is given by binary prefix coding as summation of x is equal to 1 to n f of xi into L of c xi, where c of xi is a code word for encoding xi and LC of xi is the length of the code word. Huffman algorithm goes like this. First, we need to select two characters, say P and Q, the alphabet X with the minimum frequency, and develop a subtree with these two letters as leaves, and label the root as R. And we can calculate the frequency of root as frequency of R is equal to frequency of P plus frequency of Q. Then the next step is to remove the characters P and Q from the alphabet and insert R. So now the new alphabet is going to be X dash is equal to X union R minus P comma Q. And the length of length of the new alphabet X dash will be X minus length of X minus 1. We need to repeat step 1 and 2 with the new alphabet X dash until an alphabet with only one symbol is left. So the resulting tree is a Huffman tree, and to assign the Huffman code, we need to assign 0 to the left edge and 1 to the right edge by traversing from the root. And finally, encode the input by replacing the character with its code. And with respect to LZMA compression, it is a second type of compression method. It uses a dictionary-based compression system. It finds matches using classic dictionary data structures and yields a stream of literal symbols and phrase references, which is encoded one bit at a time by the range encoder. The range encoding is implemented in binary and uses shift operations to perform faster division operation. LZMA uses sliding window method with a search buffer on the left and look-ahead buffer on the right. So during compression, the string on the window moves from right to the left, and the search buffer is like a dictionary and contains the recently encoded string. The string to be encoded is present in the look-ahead buffer. During the compression, the LZMA encoder searches the longest pattern in the search buffer that matches the pattern in look-ahead buffer. Basically, LZMA outputs three types. If nothing matches the look-ahead buffer, then a literal value in the range 0 to 255 is output. If a match is found, then a length and distance from the string in the look-ahead buffer to its match in the search buffer is output after being encoded by the range encoder. In case if the distance of the current match is found in one of the 4 distances in the distance array, then a length and a 2-bit index to the distance array is the output. Coming to the results and discussion, space and time efficiency are two most important factors for any algorithm to determine its efficiency, and compression ratio is the parameter used to measure the space efficiency of a compression algorithm. Experimental results are plotted in terms of compression time and compression ratio for ciphertexts of different sizes. We have implemented both the algorithms in Python, and this table as well as the graph shows the compression time taken for Huffman compression algorithm as well as LZMA compression algorithm for the different ciphertext. And from the graph, we can infer that the LZMA algorithm is faster compared to Huffman coding. And as the file size increases, the time required to compress the text also increases in case of Huffman coding. And the next parameter used was compression ratio, which is a ratio between the original file size to the compressed file size. Again, we have studied this on the ciphertexts of different sizes. These are the this column gives you the ciphertext before compression and the ciphertext size after applying Huffman compression and the ciphertext after applying LZMA coding. And we can with the Huffman compression, we could achieve a compression ratio of around 1.86. And with the LZMA compression algorithm, the compression ratio achieved was around 2.47. Yeah. So this graph shows the ciphertext size before and after the compression, after applying compression algorithm. From this graph, it is clear that LZMA is more efficient for this particular ciphertext. We can determine the storage space saving by using the formula 1 minus compressed file size divided by original file size. With our study, we conclude that this Huffman coding achieves around 47% of storage saving, and we got around 60% of storage space saving using LZMA compression algorithm. So in this work, the effect of compression on ciphertext towards improved storage is studied. Ciphertext with different sizes are compressed using two major types of compression methods, that is Huffman algorithm, which is based on entropy coding method, and LZMA, which is a dictionary-based compression algorithm. From the result, it is clear that ciphertext can be compressed for storage proficiency, and Huffman coding and LZMA algorithm resulted in 47% and 60% of storage efficiency respectively. So thus, this supports the idea that the combination of encryption and compression provides a secured as well as optimized data storage. These are the references, and thank you.
For this, means you have taken the same data set for implementing Huffman as well as your algorithm, right?
Yes, sir. I have taken the same ciphertext, but of different sizes.
How many samples you have verified for this?
Just a minute, sir. I have taken, so around 4 to 5. I have taken a ciphertext of size 4,527 kilobyte, 13,534 kilobyte, and 17,939 kilobyte, and 26,829 kilobyte.
Compression time, it is also less by using LZMA.
Yes, sir.
That's it. Fine.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so moving forward, our next presenter is Manasa SM, and her paper title is RSS using social network user profile.
Good afternoon, sir. Can I share the screen, sir?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Manasa, research scholar in Department of Computer Science and Engineering, University Visvesvaraya College of Engineering, Bangalore, and I'm pursuing my research under Professor Manjula ma'am. For today's topic is RSS using social networks user profile. That is using a refined service that is being recommended on online social networks. With the help of users profile is what my work is, and the overview for today's presentation is abstract. The flow of my presentation will be like this. And coming to the abstract, e-commerce application in recent days are gaining more importance due to its worldwide services. Worldwide services and user-friendly applications. E-commerce sites use social networking sites as their service providers to their customers who are associated with their social networking applications. These social networking sites will act as a third-party service providers to its users with respect to e-commerce interactions. While choosing these type of services, the users on social networking sites should be very careful. So trust plays a very important role in such activities. Hence, what we have proposed a refined service selection algorithm with the help of social network user profiles to select a service that is trusted on social networking application. Introduction, online social networking service. Online commercial application works with a larger target of people on social networks. Social networks, in support of these commercial applications, allow the users to recommend the services to other users. So trust is a very important factor while you're recommending user or while selecting any path to avail the services that are recommended by the other users. This trust path will help users in decision making and choosing the real services and real service providers on social networks. This social networks is a complex structure which represents many paths that are available between a huge number of users on social networking sites. Hence, user whenever selecting any service on social networking site, it is important that user evaluate the trust that is present between these paths and select the service that is recommended to the user. So the literature survey, I've used some of the algorithms that have been implemented by authors, where in this algorithms, we are predicting the trust values of a new relation that is being formed on social networking site, and each link or each relationship that is being formed on social networking, the weight of these links will be auto learned by the system that is trained to predict the trust values. The problem statement here is online social networks can provide a variety of services to all the users, but there exists so many trust paths to select any service from the service providers. So as many paths are available on social networking site, path overlapping will be one of the major issues in social networking sites. Hence, a trustworthy social trust path and trust path the propagation score is more important whenever we are choosing the path to select the service. Objective of this work is to compute the social trust that relates between a service consumer and the service provider. Through this, the social profiling of user choosing a trustworthy service path and the service provider is also considered. This is the system architecture of selecting a service with the help of mutual friends on social networking sites. Social networking sites has huge number of users. Here, we take the mutual friends of each user who has used the service already, and all that users list is collected. Whenever the recommendation is received by the user, first the mutual friends service list is verified. Then once that mutual friend service list is verified, then we term that mutual friends as target users. With the help of these target users, we check for the mutual services the friends have been used. When once these mutual services, mutual services which are used by the friends are confirmed, then we would term that service as refined service on social networking site. So service selection using target users, choosing services with the help of mutual friend is done with the help of a similarity of service algorithm. Here, each intermediate nodes list of services are fetched from the each user activity and their links are analyzed. Then we generate replica of these services, and with the replicas of these services, that is source user service with the series number. Now we check for if there are any matching replicas that present between the users at any point. Then as the number of matching replicas increases, then we increase the number of neighbors. That is, it gets mutually updated as the replicas as the number of replicas increase. Once these target users are placed as neighbor users, then we verify the list of services, and then we verify the time span of each service that is being used on social networking site. And then with the help of this time span, we give a verified list to the service that is being used. This is the algorithm which we have used, where we have the list of services used by the other users, and once we receive the recommendation, we find for the replicas with the other users. As the number of replicas of the used services increases, we term all those users as target users. Then with the help of these target users and the time span of the link which is being used by those users, we verify the link to be a a trusted link, and then we choose that link as a link for availing the service from the social networking recommendation. By implementing this algorithm, we have found the number of paths to avail the services which are refined without spamming and without any path overlapping. Coming to the conclusion, the complex social network structure that takes trust information, social relationship, and recommendations into roles into account reflect the real world situations better, and identifying trusted services through these mutual friends and determining the path to the recommended service is achieved without any path overlapping. So capacity of each node ensures that no lame recommendations are made inside this network. These are the few references which I have used.
Okay, why you have chosen RSS?
Sir, RSS is name given as refined service selection because in online social networking platform, as soon as you open any of the networking application, social networking applications, you get 101 recommendations on social networking applications, sir. So these recommendations are related to service that an e-commerce site is trying to provide to the user. Hence, we are refining those services with the help of users who have already used the service. Hence, we have termed it as refined service selection algorithm, sir.
Sir, we can move ahead with next candidate.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So our next presenter is Pranoti Mane, and her paper title is Implementation of Tweet Stream Summarization of Malicious Tweet Data. Pranoti, are you there? Pranoti, are you there?
Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
So the screen is visible?
Yes, it is. Please make it full screen.
Hello everyone, this is Pranoti and my paper ID is 106 and my paper topic is implementation of tweet stream summarization for malicious tweet detection. Here is the outline of our paper PPT. As we all know that the Twitter is among the most popular online social networking service because it allows users to send and read a large number of text-based messages. Around 400 million tweets are sent every day. As there is a large volume of data shared on the Twitter social network, conventional document summarizing algorithms are insufficient, and they are also insufficient in the case of tweets that are received quickly and continuously. To completely overcome this problem, we use the tweet stream summarization algorithm. For this, we are using the TVC clustering algorithm. We also propose to detect the harmful tweets for both offline and online data set. These are the problem statements. Short text messages such as the tweets are being created as shared and unpredictable, that is disaster rate. Tweets in the raw form and while being informative can also be overwhelming. To both end user and data analysts, this is a nightmare to flow through on millions of tweets and which contain enormous amount of noise and redundancy. To overcome this problem, we propose a system which can be able to generate online summarization with multi-topic searches. Here, this is our framework, or we can see it as a system architecture. From the figure, we can see that there are the three modules, that is the tweet stream clustering, high-level summarization, and timeline generation. In twit string clustering, to group similar twits, here we are using the TVC algorithm. For this, the user will select the twits. First of all, the user will select the twits. After selecting the twits, the data will be read for further processing. After reading, there will be a streaming process. The streaming process is useful to reduce the implemented word. For example, if the word is like a fishing or fisher, this one is the implemented word. To reduce the implemented word, sorry, the fishing is the implemented word. The root form of this implemented word is the fish. This is the streaming process. After streaming, there will be the stop word removal. The stop word removal is used to discard the common word or punctuation like the, a, etc. or comma. After streaming, there will be a separated and there will be the term will be separated and PF value for each word will be calculated. The twit string clustering module maintain the online statistical data. For this, we are using the TCV clustering algorithm. After that, there is a high-level summarization module. In high-level summarization module, it supports two kinds of summaries, that is online summaries and offline summaries. The online summary describes what is currently discussed. Does the input for generating online summaries is retrieved directly from the current cluster maintaining the memory. For this, we are using the rank summarization algorithm. By the help of rank summarization algorithm, we are able to find out the centrality score. After finding the centrality score, the rank is going to be decided to the content. Then there is the historical summary. The historical summary helps people to understand the main happening during a specific period. We first take snapshot of two historic clusters from PTF, and by the help of TCV rank summarization, we generate the summaries. Then third module is the timeline generation module. The timeline generation module is evaluate the effectiveness of topic involvement detection. From the figure, from the figure, we can see that user will select the twit stream. After selecting the twit stream, we are applying the twit stream clustering algorithm, and we are taking the snapshot, and that going to be saved into the pyramidal time frame. Then will be the high level summarization. In that, we are using the online and historic summary. Here we are using the TCV rank summarization, then timeline generation, which is useful to evaluate the effectiveness. From this, we are find out the malicious twit. We are detecting the malicious twit, and we are getting the result in this form. If we compare the single and multi-topic, then we can see that the time is utilizing by single is more than multi-topic. And as same, this happening in the memory also. The memory analysis for similar with a single topic and multi-topic, you can see that here is the time which required is more in single topic as compared to multi-topic. And this is the conclusion. We are using the TVC summarization algorithm for generating online summaries and historical summaries with arbitrary time duration. Then topic involvement could be detected automatically along Sumler to produce dynamic timeline twit stream. And we develop a multi-topic version of Sumler in distributed system and evaluated in more complete and large scale. And these are some references which we used in paper. Thank you.
Can you precisely give only one difference, that is between the existing system and your system? What is the major, what we can say, conclusion or contribution of your work?
Okay. In existing the previous system was on single multi-topic, or existing, we can say that the work is done on a single topic, and we are doing our work on multi-topic. We are considering the multiple content, and that multiple content we are working.
Okay, and what about the results? The results are same, or they are?
No, sir, the results are different. Here we can see that the single topic takes too much time. By the help of timeline generation, we find out this result. The single topic takes the more time, and multi-topic takes the less time. This is the time comparison and memory comparison.
Okay, so moving forward for our next presenter is Nikita R. Hatwar, and her paper title is The Selection of Electroencephal Program System for Stress Detection.
Okay.
Shall I share the screen?
Yes, please.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Very good afternoon to all. I am Nikita Hatwar. I am presenting the selection of paper on the selection of encephalogram system for stress detection, along with Dr. Ujjwala Gawande. I'm a research scholar at Department of IT, YCC Nagpur, and Ujjwala Gawande is Associate Professor, IT Department, YCC Nagpur. So this is the outline. Now, in today's modern world, stress is a very common problem. Mental stress may be defined as the effect of an excessive workload under a time constraint to meet the expectation. Stress not detected in time may lead to many psychological and physiological ailments. It causes a person to become incapable of coping with a perceived threat to their physical, emotional, or psychological well-being. Stress and its related health conditions can pose a serious threat to the quality of life, and dysfunction in daily life can interfere with the social life and physical health of an individual. Stress is associated with a range of behavioral, cognitive, neurovascular, cardiovascular, and molecular effects. The cognitive activation stress theory of stress, that is CATS, describes the association of the brain with mental stress. There exists evidence of stress-related cognitive interference that leads to memory weakness and the destruction of mental and physiological well-being. Stress has been reported to be associated with the shrinkage of the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, as well as the impairment of prefrontal networks. In chronicity, stress can turn into stress-related diseases with serious impacts, including burnout, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the term stress, as it is currently used, was coined by Hans Seil in 1936. It was by chance that Hungarian-born Hans Seil stumbled upon the idea of general adaptation syndrome, that is GAS, which the first wrote about in the British journal Nature in the summer 1936. So stress, according to him, he has said it is a non-specific response of body to any demand to change. We can say that stress is nothing but it is expectation minus the ability. Now, stress can be evaluated by polls also, such as perceived stress scale or psychological instruments, and life event coping inventory, or Ardell wellness stress, or stress response inventory. But it may happen that the person may pretend that he is not stressed. So it detects stress after a person gets stressed. So a reliable method is required which will assess and quantify stress using neuroimaging imaging modality. So other methodology to evaluate stress are facial appearance, physiological and invasive approach such as hormonal analysis. So these methodologies are uncertain and invasive. So hence, electroencephalogram or EEG signal-based stress detection has been introduced, which is non-invasive, reliable, precise, and accurate. So EEG is most suitable for the stress detection. So human nervous system's normal function is affected due to stress. So to maintain the normal activity of nervous system's brain reacts to this malformations by releasing sequence of chemical reaction, that is stress hormones such as cortisol. Different techniques are available to induce stress. Now, stress can be induced by different techniques. So this is the summary, the literature survey. The various techniques used are natural stressors such as real-time examination questionnaire, public troops test or speaking test or driving simulator, a mental arithmetic test. Now you will see that MAT is used more often. So MAT, that is mathematical arithmetic test, is extensively utilized to draw out stress in mental stress investigations. Now it's challenging to design a stress detection system which detects stress. The first challenge is to have such a EEG device that will record the brain signals from those brain locations where we can detect stress. Now, another challenge is to create a data set. So we already have some data set such as DEEP or Mahanog or BNCI, but those cannot be used for real-time stress detection. So one of the challenges is to select an EEG device for research that will classify stress and normal data. So for this proper EEG device must be selected. We should not have fixed channel electrodes. So whatever devices are available, they have fixed channels and they have the cap and fixed channel location, and we have to put the channels at that fixed channels at the fixed location. Otherwise, if EEG device has 12 channels, for example, so first electrode need to be capped at say FP1. So all remaining electrodes have fixed location. Such type of device are not fully used for classification of stress and normal because we don't know exact channel which will generate stress signals or control signals. So it is necessary to change position from one channel to another channel for the research purpose. So to detect the channel which will generate stress and normal data. Now for this, the selected EEG device, so we have selected a device which is having 6+1 channels, which is made in India. And there are 6 channels to record EEG signals from brain locations and 1 reference channel. So it can be used with both wet and dry electrodes. So this is the selected device. And these are the specifications of that device. And we have a different brain sensing locations. So you can see that there are various brain sensing locations. So using these brain sensing locations, we can estimate that where I can get the stress. So in the above diagram, there are 23 brain locations. Each shown location give different signals. So each brain location gives different signals. So signals such as emotions, motor planning, eyesight, verbal understanding, attention, etc. So from perspective of application, we have to select the correct brain locations. For the stress management, the analysis shows that it is required to record the data from more than one brain location, such as FP1, FP2, F7, F8, etc. So these are some of the brain locations which are shown over here. So in the proposed work, the real-time stress detection system needs to be built that requires brain signals to be acquired using EEG device. Thus, an appropriate EEG device is acquired and dataset is created as per the requirement of stress detection system. So EEG is used to collect electrical activity of brain, which is non-invasive medical imaging technique and is cost-effective. An EEG signal also provides an insight of how an information is handled in the brain. The selection of the EEG signal for stress detection is due to its technological advancement in recording ability. So now this shows the block diagram of recording of EEG signals. So you can see there is a subject. You have an EEG device. It is recorded and it is stored in the hard disk. So figure 4 above shows the block diagram of recording EEG signals from subject and creating a raw database of recorded EEG signals from various brain locations. So this is the data set which has been created specially for this particular research. So this is the structure. You have the subject ID folder inside the data set, that is the main folder. Inside that you have a subject ID. Then you have the data is recorded for both normal and stress. So accordingly, the channel folder will be created for each channel, and you have 4 files, that is recording.csv, raw.csv, filter.csv, and plot files. So this is the structure. So the root folder of file system is dataset. It contains the list of subject folders and a file subject_model.dat. The system is designed to store basic information of subject, that is ID, name, age, and gender. So that will be stored in subject_model.dat. Records of subjects are stored in a file subject_model.dat. This file is a binary file and stored in a system. Now, ID of each subject is auto-generated by the system. where
Sorry to
the-
interrupt you, but we have last 1 minute. Please conclude your presentation.
Yes, sir. So this is the structure and this is the format. So we have the different columns. So different levels. So this is the structure where you get the ID, time, channel, phase, and that is stored in recording.csv. The sampling rate, which we have generated the formula. So it is SR is equal to NR into 1000 upon time of last record in milliseconds upon time of first millisecond. Now for dictating stress, we need to differentiate into various frequency bands. So that has been done. So these are the frequency bands. So this is the raw data which is captured. This is the frequency in PSD because we have to convert it to Fourier. So it can be concluded that stress affects the prefrontal and frontal region of brain because the signals acquired from FP1, FP2, F3, F4, F7, and F6 will give some appropriate stress detection. It is important to convert time domain to data to frequency. Extract different frequency bands to do analysis of stress. PSD, that is power spectral density, is required to convert each complex value of frequency into beam into power of amplitude of that particular frequency. So thank you. These are the references. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm done.
How this time domain data is converted into frequency domain data?
So it is converted by FFT, fast Fourier transform. So
yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You continue.
Sir, this paper mainly I'm focusing it on selection of the device because it required a particular device to make the database, that is the data set. I tried the different data sets which are available such as DEEP and Mahanob and all, but I was not able to get the real-time stress. So therefore, main emphasis was on selection of the each device for stress detection. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Now the device means just a question that we are having this means the government is proposing this now regarding stress detection for the workplaces. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
now we are having like for each and every workstation we are having in and out, right?
Yes, sir.
So is it possible to implement this at the in and out station so that we can detect the stress of the employee whenever he is entering the organization and leaving the organization?
Yes, sir, we can do it because we will be using deep learning and classify. Our system will learn and then we can take any real-time subject and we can have the EEG device, the electrode placed on the brain, and it will give us whether that person is stressed or not. Yes, it can be done.
We need to place an electrode on his head, right?
Yes, sir. So in the device which we have selected, we have dry as well as wet electrodes. So dry, and the positions which we have selected are mostly the skin, means so it is not a hairy part. So it will not irritate that particular subject. Means the minimum botheration will be there.
Now, as a future scope, is it possible to detect the stress without placing the electrodes on the head of particular human?
Then, sir, we have to go for the facial case, or we need to take the survey. So those techniques, the subject may pretend that he is not stressed, and those techniques are when the person is stressed.
Are any paper? Is there any paper published on such a type of technique?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have a paper on that also. Facial recognition, or you can see the mobile moment. The keystroke will increase if that particular person is stressed. So using the keystroke also, you can detect the stress, or using the facial expression also, you can detect the stress. That is possible, sir.
Thank you.
But disadvantages, they are stressed and then we get the output. Or it may happen that that particular person is stressed, but he may pretend that he's not stressed. Therefore, more effective technique is EEG by just collecting the brain signals, because the prefrontal part is affected when any person is stressed. So using the prefrontal part of electrode, that is FP1, FP2, or F7, F8, we can get the live signals of the brain and we can detect the stress. Yes, sir.
Okay, so moving forward, our next presenter is Samia Nasiri, and her paper title is Generation of User Interfaces and Code from User Stories.
Hello, can I
Yes,
share my screen?
yes, you can, please.
Is screen is visible?
Yes, it is. No.
First of all, thank you for accepting my presentation at conference. My name is Samia Nasari. This presentation is titled Generation of User Interfaces and Code from User Stories. So about this presentation, we have plan, we have introduction, literature review, we will explain our approach and results, and finally, conclusion and future works. Today, mobile and web applications are used everywhere in our daily life. These two types of applications are very different. They are developed and deployed differently. This has developers to develop cross-platform mobile applications, as each operating system requires a programming language and development tools. The concept of cross-platform application development lets the developer write the code once and then use it on any platform. For this reason, we have adopted our method that generates automatically the cross-platform applications from Agile requirements. These applications contains the CRUD functionality, which are create, read, update, and delete. To achieve our goal, we have used Flutter framework with Dart language that the automation is performed using Axelio. In our previous work, we have done transformation from CIM level to PIM level in MDA approach. Our input of our previous approach is user stories, which represent the requirements. And we have done some rules using NLP techniques to extract automatically Nico file that represents the diagram class UML. In this paper, we have continued the transformation and we have proceeded from PIM level to code. In related works, most of researchers in field of generation of user interfaces and code are focused on user requirements which are presented in use case model or other models, but they didn't generate user interface from Agile requirements. We have focused on the generation of code and user interfaces using Axelio by developing several template files for each eco class. These files generate code of Flutter applications. In this figure, we have architecture of a proposed approach, which is the transformation from CIM level to code in MDA approach. In our previous approach, we have done transformation from CIM level to PIM level, and the input is the user story template, which requirements in Agile methods. And we have done and developed the rules using Stanford Call NLP and using Python language to extract components of UML class diagram, which is in our case is an eco file, which is an XML file. From this eco file in this paper, in this approach, we have done transformation from PIM level to code to extract automatically and generate the CRUD applications, which are cross-platform, web and mobile, using Axelio for transformation, and the code is developed using Dart or Flutter framework. This architecture presents the layers of the software. We have here presentation, business, and data access layer. Data access layer here contains the CRUD functionality, which are the create, read, update, and delete. In presentation, we have the form. The forms, the interfaces, for example, the form with text editing, etc. We have developed an MTL file using Axelio for extracting and generating the code from an eco file. This template file presents the presentation layer and data access layer. But business layer is we will focus on business layer in our future works. In the results, to demonstrate our method of transforming PM level to code, we use the case study of inline course management. The echo file is generated automatically from a set of user stories. As we see here, we have a lot of echo class, which are part of an echo file here from user story. And in this approach, we generate code and interfaces correspond to each echo class. For example, let's take event echo class here. We can generate the code and interfaces. We have here list of events stored in file store with a Firebase database with actions like add, delete. We can update selected event. And this view, this interface, this page presents the read functionality of CRUD actions. The generated code and applications correspond to web and mobile applications. These two interfaces correspond to web applications with CRUD actions. We have here in figure number 5, we can add new event. And in figure number 6, we can update an event. Here we have the third event, which we selected this event from a list of events in the first page, in the view or in list. After click on update button, we can register and store this information in cloud database. These two interfaces correspond to mobile applications that correspond to add new events and to update a selected event. We have here the first event. We can update informations here corresponding to event number 1. We can change start date and date, etc. We have here an Axelio project structure, which contains various templates to implement automatic code generator. We have two folders. We have data access layer and presentation. But after running the corresponding templates file, the code is generated in data access layer and layer is presented by a folder. We have here data access folder and presentation folder. We have here a lot of files. Each file here is corresponding to echo class. For example, we have here event map. And in data access, we have event model, which contain the attribute of classes, etc. And how to update the code corresponding to delete, etc. The functionality of CRUD actions. In terms of conclusion, we can say that this transformation of PM level to code has performed using Axelio and by developing several templates. And this action, which are the CRUD functionality, are mostly performed in all systems. The generated across platform web and mobile applications. Our approach is very useful. It allows to reduce time. It facilitates to the analytical task of analysts and developers to create software quickly, thanks to advantages of the cross-platform concepts. Realized in our approach by the Flutter framework. As perspective, we will focus on the business layer to generate business services based on user stories, and we will add other functionalities related to code generation from the data access layer by integrating the referential integrity. And thank you. Thank you.
Okay, from just one question, how you are going to achieve and software quality from this?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, how we are going to achieve a software quality from this? Means what are the measures that are that you have taken into consideration?
Sure, the advantage of cross-platform application that allows to write the code once and don't to develop each application for each platform like iOS, Android applications or web applications. This approach is very useful because we use the cross-platform and because we generate automatically using Axelio. Axelio is Eclipse in EMF Eclipse environments because it is based on Eco5.
Okay, fine. That's it from my side.
Yes.
That's it. I am done. No issue.
Okay, so we have completed all the presentation of this session. Now I'd like to thank our all authors for their excellent presentation and all the participants for being a part of this international conference. We hope this session was informative enough. All the presenters will be getting their digital certificates and all the documents through email within 2 working days. Further, all the papers have been already forwarded to the Springer, and the publication will be live within 5 to 6 months. So kindly cooperate with the team ICTCS and SmartCom 2021. Now I'd like to thank our session chair for chairing this session. And so there is a token of appreciation from the Global Knowledge Research Foundation and the team ICTCS and SmartCom 2021. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your valuable presence, sir. Now I'd like to request you all to turn on your camera for the quick snapshot on making this conference good and memorable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, shall we leave, Harsh?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, sir.